Hey everyone, it is June 17, 2015. I'm Rene Ritchie, and right now we're going to talk about WWDC in retro and OS X El Capitan in approachment, I guess. This is the iMore Show. Joining me this week from newly watch-controlled illuminated Cape Cod, Peter Florrick. I was about to call you Peter Florrick. This is how my week is going. Peter Cohen, how are you?
I'm doing quite well, thank you, Rene.
I heard your Jurassic Park opening weekend was amazing, or sorry, Jurassic World opening weekend was amazing.
Yes, indeed. You know, there's only one thing that, or right below my list of movies that I have to go to besides kaiju movies or dinosaur movies. So I was very happy to add to the megabucks coffers of Jurassic World this weekend with their half a gigabuck opening, I think, worldwide.
This wasn't Guardians of the Galaxy 1.5, right? I'll be disappointed if I want to see that.
There was no Rocket Raccoon, there was no Groot, so yeah. But there was Chris Pratt. Chris Pratt was front and center, and he's a pretty good action hero. Gotta hand it to him.
Nice. Also joining us, also back from WWDC and Layers and all the other things, Serenity Caldwell. How are you, Ren?
Hello, I'm doing great. I spent the weekend recovering from Dub and doing some unpacking. My office is 95% complete, which I'm pretty psyched about.
It looks great. I can even see a classic iPod in the corner.
There is a classic iPod. That is the very first iPad, and I got it couple months after it was released. I was the first person, literally the first person in my high school to have one, which I thought was pretty cool. Awesome. Also, yes, I was in high school. I'm sorry.
Do people not assume we went to school? I think that's what it is, right? You people couldn't get past kindergarten, so you became bloggers.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, more that I was in high school when it was released.
Oh, okay, ouch.
People, yeah.
All right. I think Peter and I were in the retirement home when it was released.
It's true. When it came out, let's see, my youngest was 2 years old. So.
Well, I was older than them.
Peter, there's this new thing out called an iPod. We should go check into that.
Back in my day, we played music with sticks, and we liked it, by gum.
All right, so really quickly, there are a few headlines to mention. As of today, which I said was June 17th, the Apple Watch is available in retail. You can't just go in and buy it, however. You need to reserve it online. Not all models are available. Some of them are still easier to come by than others. But if you have been trying to get an Apple Watch and the online ordering isn't to your tastes, you can now get it in store like a human being. Also, there is a security vulnerability being reported that is basically an attack on Keychain. It's an it's a cross-application attack. Nick Arnott and I are looking into it. It looks like the headlines are a bit overblown. It affects the Mac more than OS X simply because the Mac is more open. The Mac more than iOS simply because OS X is more open than iOS. A lot of the URL stuff is previously known, and the result mostly it looks like people not properly securing their URL schemes rather than anything wrong with the system. There is a bunch of stuff Apple absolutely has to fix, but no one needs to set their hair on fire and run down the street just yet. So more on that as we learn more.
Well, we're not going to judge. If you want to do that, that's up to you. But
it's recreational, not
necessary. Exactly.
All right, so let's get into WWDC. Ren, you want to do a brief recap? Where would you like to start?
Oh God, I just figured we talk really quickly about our experiences. The keynote. I mean, we talked a lot about this on MacBreak and other places, and you guys talked about it on Debug a little bit. And
we had a podcast that has not yet been released. There's a missing podcast.
A podcast that went into the ether, which makes me so sad. It was at AltConf, and we had great response at AltConf, but we would like you guys to hear it. But yeah, Renee and I were at the keynote. Peter was at AltConf all week. I was at Jesse Char and Elaine Pow's new conference for designers and design-based Apple communities called Layers, which was super fun, and basically had popsicles and dumplings catered all week to it. Which was
I did not know there were popsicles and dumplings.
There were dumplings. Damn! I went to the wrong show.
Dumplings the first day. Ocean Beach popsicles came. I had an orange vanilla. I had a couple of orange vanilla popsicles, but there was also like a Kappa Mochaccino popsicle that people really liked. I had a debate with designers on whether or not a milk-based substance can be a popsicle. Answer: as long as it was once liquid and then frozen. It can be. But no, I like WWDC is always such a fun, exciting, and enervating week for me. Both of when we work at home, we tend to be in these like tiny little boxes, and not only do we get all of these, yeah, exactly, we're in our minds like little glass cases, and then we get to see everybody that we talk to daily, and some people that we've never talked to before, face to face, and we also get to hear about all of these cool new things coming to our operating
They're
systems.
way taller than they are on Twitter, Ren. Every one of them.
Yeah, well, they have to fit into the little square. But there's a reason why I don't.
Peter's like 9 feet tall. It's amazing.
It's true. He's very tall. But yeah, I had a great time despite not feeling super well the entire week. I saw a lot of great people. I'm really excited for all of the improvements coming down the line. We're going to talk some more about OS X El Capitan later on in this podcast. We've also got iOS 9, which is a huge update for under-the-hood stuff. It's not as flashy as say, iOS 7 or iOS 8, but all of the stuff that it's introducing for the iPad alone is incredible. All of the split view stuff, pop over or slide overs, the fact that the mute rotation lock switch is coming to the iPhone, like all of these really cool things. Which yes,
Apple made Ren happy.
Apple made Ren very happy because the only thing that was on my sort of iOS wish list that I did not get was multiple users for the iPad. Sniff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe with the iPad Pro in October. Maybe.
I feel weird complaining about this. I always feel like whenever I complain about these kinds of shows, I feel like you're the supermodel complaining that the photo shoot is getting sand into your boxes or whatever. It's like a wonderful life, but it's also grueling. And every year, Dub, by the end, I feel like I've been run over by that very slow-moving steamroller in Austin Powers. And like you wonder why you can't run away because it's moving so slowly. But it just by the end of the week, it's completely on top of you.
Yeah, when you've had such a wonderful week, it feels very sad to sit on the plane and think, oh God, I'm so tired. What did I do to my body? And that's not even, even when we take care of ourselves, it's so much information. I mean, think about, this is something that sort of I experienced. I went and did a couple of classes just to sort of reinvigorate my brain on subjects. And sitting in a classroom for 9 hours, we kind of forget like how exhausting, how mentally draining that is. And WWDC is basically like that for 5 days.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, you have to be social and on point. And like I'm a pretty social person, but that's still, it's a lot. But the good thing is like now, like that all happened and it all got ingested, and now it's being digested, and now we get to actually have the time this week to be like, all right, here are all of the amazing things that we learned that we are now going to write about.
Peter, I saw no police reports about you destroying any buildings, overturning any cars, eating any citizens. So it sounds like AltConf was kind of tame for you this year.
Well, that's just because the police were elsewhere at the time, I think. I managed to do it all under the radar, as it were. AltConf was pretty low-key this year. It was great. It was fantastic. And, I cannot emphasize enough, if you are in San Francisco for WWDC, or if you're just in the periphery of it, you owe it to yourself to walk across the street to the Metreon or wherever they're going to have it next year. I hope it's at the Metreon again, to go to Alt, because it's totally free. You don't have to sign up for it, although they do encourage people to register just so they've got a rough idea of how many people to expect. Because the conferences are great. I've talked to the conference coordinators, and I know that this wasn't by intent, but I sort of broke down this year's talks into 3 main subjects. There were technical talks, for sure. There was best practices for open source and for Swift and for Objective-C. People who are developing now for iOS and OS X and even for other platforms could get a lot out of the technical discussions that were being had by various developers who are giving conferences. But there were also talks on business development. David Sparks, Mac Sparky on Twitter, who's a great author of Mac and iOS related stuff. He's also a very talented business lawyer. So he gave basically a free hour's worth of consulting to anybody who would listen about basic stuff that you should know about before entering into contracts as an independent developer and how to protect yourself. That was great. I did a talk for app developers to understand better how the press looks at their apps and how to get coverage from the press. You know, basic mistakes that you can make in email that will make us pass by your press release quicker than others. So there was a lot to sort of gather, and then there were social issues being talked about as well, whether it was women in tech, or one of my favorite talks was about how to be a nicer person, and the value of being nice, and why people are kind of compelled to act like jerks online. So there was a lot of consciousness raising as well, and I just thought it was a really nice mix of stuff. The fact that it was free was great, and it was just with a really cool group of people. But you couldn't walk into a bar or a restaurant anywhere in that downtown area without seeing somebody who it was either a Mac or iOS developer, or somebody who you wanted to have a conversation with about that. And from that perspective, it's such an amazing experience to do, and I have the same sort of pangs of loss that Ren was just talking about. When I got on the plane on Thursday night, I'm like, oh, I'm so tired, and I've had so much to absorb this week. But in the same token, I was really sad to leave everybody behind, knowing full well that the party was going to break up in a few hours anyway, simply because it's such an invigorating, just joyous environment to be in. It's something that you really do want to expose yourself to whenever you can.
Awesome. And it sounds like Layers was the same kind of trip, starting with Susan Kerr and all the way through.
Absolutely. I mean, you wouldn't have known that this was Layers' first ever year, and this is Jesse's first major conference. Jesse and Elaine have both organized things in the past, and they are expert organizers, so I had high hopes going into Layers, and I was not disappointed. They had a fantastic lineup of speakers, again, as you mentioned, starting with John Gruber interviewing Susan Kerr about her life, about the industry, about what she thinks about the industry today, about what she thinks of San Francisco, the font. There was a lot of really, really good discussion happening there. And in addition,
Susan Kerr, by the way, mother of the dog cow.
And many other things.
And many other things, yeah.
Mother of the dog cow, mother of
Mac
many...
icons.
Yeah, many Mac fonts, early Mac fonts, and icons. She is very, very interesting to speak. They had a host of wonderful, really smart designers from all walks of life, not just your typical iOS designers, although those were definitely in attendance as well. Nevin Mergen, who does Big Bucket Software, which has released The Incident and Space Age, but also works at Panic, did a fantastic talk about secret weapons and incorporating your weird, obscure hobbies into your design style and taste, and being able to put one completely different thing next to another completely different thing and merge them together to create something brand new. And he also had a cute little anecdote about his wife, which was very touching. And gosh, who else? Arik Devins did a fantastic talk on the Criterion Collection's design and why people are still buying DVDs from them when DVD sales elsewhere have just completely tanked. Gosh, there were so many great talks, and it was a wonderful environment. It was a big, giant room in the mall of all places, which you wouldn't think would be a great place for a conference, but they've built this beautiful conference center that's just fantastic. I managed to do a round table with Will Shipley, Mark Edwards, and Arnold Kim on called the Apple Punditry Council, but mostly we just talked about Apple's security and how they, how much or little that they reveal to developers and designers, and how that affects building for future products. It was just a really casual and yet very, 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 really, really helpful conference, where you would think, as it being a design conference, that it would just be for designers, but it is really one of these more lifestyle conferences where the topics may be hinged around the concept of design and working in design, but you can take so much from a talk that may be theoretically about package design or app design or internal design. And I love those kinds of conferences. I think that it was brilliant that Jesse sort of cross-scheduled this against WWDC because there aren't really a lot of things for designers to do at WWDC. Like you can sit in on the core animation dub sessions, but honestly, being in a room with a bunch of other creative people makes creative things happen. And there was drawing paper on the tables and crayons on the tables. And I wish that someone had taken a picture of all of the mats after every day, because there was so much fantastic typography and art, because you have a couple hundred designers and artists just sitting around a table sketching while they're listening to people talk. And the great food, the aforementioned great food and great coffee. They had fills all 3 days.
So jealous. Meanwhile, after Peter and Ren were doing all this, I was slumming back at WWDC like a traditionalist. But it was a lot of fun. I had a conference pass this year, so they let me go to State of the Union, the ADAs, and all the sessions during the week. And they actually did live up to the promise of streaming a lot of the sessions. Basically, everything that was in the main hall, which is called Presidio, was streamed, and it was streamed well. I mean, streaming is not easy. We've all seen streaming fail many, many times. They were doing cuts. It wasn't just, they show the slides on the thing and it doesn't move, and almost everyone got the keynote treatment, where you'd see like an evangelist or an engineer or a designer up on stage. You'd see them walking, talking, the slides would come in and out, the shots would track, they'd pan, they'd zoom. It was so incredibly well done. Hats off, kudos to that team. They did a phenomenal job. And as a result, people could actually be at hotels or other venues like Alt and watch the show, at least the main talks during the show, as if they were there live. And that's an awesome community spirit, because you leave Dub and it's not like, oh, I'll talk to you about it in a day or a month or whenever I finally get the videos. It was just they'd seen it too, so you could have immediate discussions. And the presenters were magnificent. From State of the Union, where Eliza Block talked about all the new stuff that's happening with WatchKit and ClockKit, going through all the sessions, Jake Barron's on the watch best practices, Mike Stern and Rachel Roth on watch design. They have the actual prototypers. Apple goes through stages of design. People in Johnny Ives' lab come up with all these great products, but then people have to turn them into real things. And they have a whole team of people who just do that, and they shared sort of how they create software for hardware that doesn't exist. At one point, they drew a toaster on an iPad, and they had an app that they made, and both those were done in Keynote, and they hid behind a sofa with two Keynote controllers, so that as one person was pressing the iPhone, the other person would make like the toast pop up on the iPad, and they would just get feedback and iterate and do all these great things. And they had the person who made the San Francisco font was up on stage, or at least one of the people from the team, and he talked about how it's two font families, SF Compact for the watch and SF for iOS and OS X, and how there's two types in there. There's text for below 20 points and display for over 20 points, and the different weights. In fact, there were so many really, really cool sessions that I could not make it into all of them. I actually ended up missing some because they were just counter-programmed. But all of them are available. I believe you don't even need a login right now. You can just go to developer.apple.com, log in, and watch all of them. And great extensive, the UI kit talks, the Springboard talks, the Web kit talks. It was literally all-star after all-star engineering and designers up there. And the labs were fantastic too. I got to talk to a lot of the people in WWDR, to developer relations, and they were all terrific to a singular one, and I learned a ton. So thank you, Apple, for letting us do that. And like Ren and Peter said, we will have more as we digest all this information. We will have more of it coming out, I hope, in equally digestible formats.
Yeah, one of the things that you just touched on, Rene, that I want to go back to real quick. A common complaint that I heard at Alt this year was about counter-programming. It was, there are two sessions going on at the same time that I want to go to. I don't think that you can pay conference coordinators a bigger compliment than there is too much good stuff for me to come and watch. I think it says something, when you're at WWDC or Layers or Alt or whatever conference you might be at, and there are multiple talks going on, and you want to attend them all, and you just can't, and you find yourself in the position of wanting to clone yourself so you can go to multiple things. That's always a good situation to be in. That means that there are lots of interesting people who have lots of interesting things to say. And by the way, as far as Alt is concerned, although they're not up now, all of the sessions, including our podcast, were recorded, and they're being digested slowly by the folks who ran all the videos. So in the coming days, we should have links to all that stuff, which we can post on our website when it's ready.
The lost talks will be found.
The lost talks will be found. So we apologize for not having our podcast from Alt available to you last week. Available now, but it should be available soon.
And just one final hats off to the events team that plans all this, to the evangelism team that has to figure out what to put up, to the engineers and designers who have to get up and talk in front of huge crowds of developers who may or may not be pleased with the last iteration of their work. None of this stuff is easy. None of it is trivial. The PR people who do the endless briefings, the marketing people who work out all the messages, the executives who do the keynote. It is an incredible team effort, and they did a phenomenal job. Looking forward to next year already. We're going to take a quick break, and I'm going to tell you about something that is cool. If you would classify yourself as a geek, a gamer, or a pop culture nerd, a present company included, then Loot Crate is a subscription box for you. For less than $20 a month, you get 6 to 8 items of gamer and pop culture, licensed gear, apparel, collectibles, unique one-of-a-kind items, and more. Make sure you head to lootcrate.com/iMore and enter iMore to save $3 on a new subscription. So how does this work? Every month, there is a different theme, and you're guaranteed $40 or more worth of items, all curated around that theme. They're all inspired by classic movies, video games releases, and just pop culture franchises. Previous crates have included items from things like Star Wars, Marvel, The Walking Dead, Legend of Zelda, and more. This month, Loot Crate invites you to join the Cyber Revolution, that's C-Y-B-E-R Revolution, with an assortment of cool tech-themed collectibles from a wide array of awesome franchises. They're featuring exclusive items from Terminator Genesis, Borderlands 2, and more, including an exclusive t-shirt you won't find anywhere else. Basically, Loot Crate is like a friend who knows what you love and surprises you with an awesome present every month. Did we also mention they will ship to over 13 different countries? As someone who is not in the U.S., I am often stymied by the lack of support for people outside the U.S. So, kudos, hats off to Loot Crate for this. You have until the 19th at 9 p.m. Pacific to subscribe and receive that month's crate. And when the cutoff happens, that's it. It's over. So make sure you run, do not walk, to lootcrate.com/iMore, enter code iMore, and save $3 on your new subscription today. All right, so I wanted to get into El Capitan a little bit, which is a new version of... it sounds like one of those cartoons I used to watch when I was a kid. El Capitan. It's going to be out. It's right now out in developer preview. It'll be out in public beta in July. It'll be out for everybody this fall. For the last 2 years, that's meant October. So I guess smart money is still on October. But what it is the 11th generation, although they started at 0. Peter, how does this work? Is this the 12th or 11th version of OS X?
It's the 12th because, actually, really the 13th because you got to count the public beta as well, which was, pre 1.0 release.
So it's like Doctors, like that you can't go by linear numbering.
That's right. That's right. You never know when the TARDIS is going to take you to a different point in time.
All right, so Peter, I'm really interested in your feedback on this because you've been using OS X since you've been using the Mac since before it was doomed.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I've got the T-shirt to prove it too that our own Rich Stevens has made.
So what's your take on, I guess, two things on El Capitan specifically, and when Apple does these sort of Snow Leopard or Mountain Lion releases in general?
Well, as far as El Capitan itself is concerned, this was exactly what I was looking for. I wasn't looking for a big flashy do-over like they did with Yosemite. Yosemite, was a major user interface adjustment for a lot of people. They've got that done, so we knew that wasn't going to happen again in the same way that we knew going from iOS 7 to iOS 8 was going to be a milder UI change. But it looks like they've done a lot of stuff under the hood to enhance performance and to enhance productivity. And they've made a lot of great features for it. The naming of El Capitan is something that I think a lot of people have paid attention to because, of course, Apple announced with the release of Mavericks specifically that it was going to switch to place names in California specifically that sort of evoked whatever they wanted it to evoke. So the first one, Mavericks, was in relation to a surf break that's off the coast, somewhat near Cupertino, where Apple is. The second, of course, was a reference to the national park. El Capitan is a feature inside the national park, inside Yosemite, which has led...
It's a granite monolith, according to Wikipedia, Peter.
A granite monolith. So is it a big black granite monolith that apes start throwing jawbones at? Sorry, 2001 reference. Anyway, which has led some people to suggest, all right, so this is a refinement of Yosemite. Going into it, I was kind of hoping for Snowsemite because I like silly words. In the same way that, leopard to snow leopard or mountain lion from lion were sort of iterations. But you can see what Apple's doing here. It's kind of a TikTok product philosophy. Take something, make a change to it, and then iterate it in the following year. Having said that, there are a lot of user-facing features of El Capitan that are going to be major changes for people. So don't think that this is just an under-the-hood refinement.
So before we go on from the name, because this interests me, because a friend of mine, Alex, pointed out that they're doing the same thing with software they do with the iPhone, basically, which is, they have iPhone 5, then iPhone 5S, iPhone 6, and conceivably iPhone 6S. John Siracusa famously said cat modifier cat. And it's a TikTok strategy. We see this in Intel. We see this in a lot of things. I happen to like it. With Intel specifically, it's usually the die shrink, then the architectural change. I think it makes for better software overall.
Well, a lot of us have been critical of Apple's attempts with Yosemite because so much changed under the hood, and there were some really glaring problems that I think we all felt like Apple could use a breather to get some of this stuff under control for El Cap. But yeah, there's no question that Apple uses this iterative development philosophy throughout its product lines, not just in hardware but also in software. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, Ren, El Capitan, I mean, it's a dangerous mountain, but it's also a bit of a mouthful.
El Capitan. I kind of roll my eyes at the people who are like, oh, I can't say it, it's so hard. I mean, Yosemite is equally strange. It's just more people have heard of it. Yosemite? There's a lot of ways that can be mispronounced. I don't know. I'm really excited about El Capitan. I think that the naming progression, as you mentioned, I love the fact that they are kind of acknowledging the TikTok, even with the California place names. We didn't really see that with Mavericks. Although, really, what are you going to be? Mavericks and then OS X Big Wave? Yeah. OS X Surfboard.
OS X Foam. I don't know.
Yeah. OS X Foam does have kind of a chill way to it. But yeah, really, I think they had to kind of look within the park. And there are so many awesome monuments and awesome places in Yosemite to name that I'm not surprised at all that they went that direction.
Yeah, I guess I'm not surprised either. I think the cat modifier cat was easier for people to appreciate because it had the same name, and like leopard, snow leopard, it was right there in the name. And this is not like snow Yosemite or mountain Yosemite sort of thing. But
there's no mountain called Snow Yosemite, as John Gruber said last week.
Yeah, no, not yet. Surprised if we don't see it now. So there were two things that were highlighted: performance and user experience. Let's start off a little bit with performance. Peter, you've commented about things like the Discovery D issue before and the general sentiment. I still believe that, I've had problems with every version of OS X. I just forget about them when the next version comes out because things that annoyed me in the past fall away and things that annoy me now are terrible and need to be fixed immediately. And I think that's human nature. But was this a course correction? People said that Apple admitted, I think it was maybe Syracuse again, said Apple admitted no wrongdoing, but did they course correct here?
No, I don't necessarily think that they did. I think that they're making changes in Yosemite that correct a lot of the problems that we've been talking about. So I wouldn't look at El Capitan as a course correction at all.
Yeah, so is it more of the advancement and refinement like they labeled it?
Yeah, exactly. And the interesting thing is, they've pushed some of the performance aspects of El Capitan to the rear in terms of their actual user-facing material on El Cap, but that stuff is incredibly important.
Like what?
Metal is the thing that excites me the most. Metal. Metal is something that we saw debut in iOS 8 last year, and what Metal does is it enables graphics applications to run much quicker on iOS 8. So you can have more sophisticated games with a lot more moving objects inside them, more sophisticated smoke and fire effects, and so on, without overtaxing the processor. Now you're going to be able to do some of that same stuff on the Mac. But the difference is, you know, the Mac Mac graphics performance has really kind of lagged behind PC graphics performance for a long time now. And there are all sorts of reasons for this. Basic architectural componentry of OS X, the way that OpenGL works, the sort of extensions that Apple's allowed for OpenGL, and the way that Apple integrates graphics processors themselves on the Mac have all been issues. Well, Apple's kind of pulling out all the stops here by bringing Metal to OS X, and what that means is that the draw routines in apps that take advantage of it are going to be a lot faster, and they're going to be a lot faster across the board on the Mac. Macs that can run it are going to see this performance increase. You're not going to necessarily need a Mac with the highest end GPU in order to see these performance benefits. It's something that as long as the developer has taken into account Metal in El Capitan, then you're going to see improved performance on this. Up to 10x draw column performance improvement, according to Apple's own estimations. System-level graphics rendering up to 50% faster, and also 40% more efficient. Now that's an important thing, because you can go out and spend $2,000-3,000 on a really awesome PC gaming laptop, but have something that gets hot as Hades when it's sitting on your lap, and something that's got a battery that lasts for less than an hour. Apple is taking a holistic attitude towards this. They're not just trying to boost graphics performance; they're also trying to boost efficiency. So your Mac doesn't get hot or as hot, and your Mac doesn't waste battery life either. So you've still got a machine that can still do what you need it to do when you need it to do it. And what's more, these are graphics performance improvements that aren't just for games. It's not just for trivialities. If you think that this is just about frame rates in games, you're absolutely wrong. OpenGL touches almost every aspect of the Mac operation. So, you know, basic system level draw calls. If you're using creative applications like Adobe Photoshop or Lightroom, if you're using video applications like After Effects or Final Cut Pro or iMovie, you're going to see some enhancements here. It's important stuff.
What really was cool for me is the way that they did it. Not so much that they brought Metal to the Mac, because I think, you know, we were all sort of hoping for that, but that they brought it over. They took OpenGL, they combined their OpenCL work, which was the standard implementation for Open Computing Language, which lets you use GPUs for general purpose computing, and then they built core animation and core graphics on top of it, so that if your app already uses that, I'm not saying you get it for 100% free, but you seem to get it for a lot less work than you otherwise would. So like Ren, some of our friends like Gus Mueller at Acorn, he's probably going to see benefits of this without having to re-architect the way some other ports might have forced him to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great enhancement for people who are building graphics programs as well as your traditional games. I'm really excited to see what Adobe is able to do with Metal come the fall. I know they're working on an implementation, and for me, you know, anything that makes Photoshop and Illustrator faster are going to be huge gains.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Adobe, I don't think they actually showed it, but they talked about the sort of improvements they were getting with After Effects and Illustrator. Peter, did they elaborate on that yet?
You know, I talked to them a little bit about it during their Creative Cloud 2015 product briefing, and really they didn't have much more to say other than you know, coming soon. And yes, we're definitely on top of it, and definitely it makes us excited. Creative Cloud 2015 was announced and has been released, and if you read the press releases or the coverage of that, you'll find that Adobe is talking a lot about some of the inherent performance improvements that some of their apps like Illustrator are getting with that. It's important not to conflate that with the Metal stuff. That stuff is coming down the pike at some point later. But Creative Cloud itself, the 2015 apps, also have some improvements for Macs that have discrete graphics processing units. So, you know, if you've got a well-equipped iMac or a well-equipped 15-inch MacBook Pro or a Mac Pro that you're running your Creative Cloud apps from, you're going to see some performance benefits right away with those. And then once El Cap comes out and once Adobe updates its apps, there's going to be even more for you.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. And some of the things that
one thing before we go on, Rene, performance improvements extend or in El Capitan extend beyond just Metal. Metal isn't the only enhancement that Apple's done here. Apple's got faster app switching in El Cap. Launching applications is faster. Displaying mail messages is faster. The rendering engine that they're using in Mail is much quicker than before. Opening previews is fantastically faster or opening PDFs in Preview, in the Preview app, is fantastically faster, like on the order of 4x compared to where it was before. So there is a lot of across-the-board performance improvement that Apple is baking into El Cap.
Yeah, I mean, it's super interesting for me. They've got some really smart people on the Mail team, and what they're doing, they've got a whole new IMAP engine, and it sort of prioritizes, especially on account setup, the messages that it gives you first. You don't have to sit there waiting while it chugs away. It gives you the stuff that you might need to work on right away. And also, you know, like the Gmail stuff is supposedly really improved, and Apple's gotten a lot of heat for Gmail support in the past, but Google's got a really eccentric is the nicest way of putting it, Gmail implementation, and apparently it's been changing a lot. It's not static either. It's a moving target, which makes it hard for someone at the scale of Apple to keep up with, but it sounds like they've done a much better job.
Indeed.
Yeah, I agree.
So, Ren, what about the Spotlight stuff? I mean, it's not my dream of having Siri on the Mac yet, which I think would be fantastic, especially for accessibility because you can do voice control, but now with the new Spotlight, you still get to do natural language. You can do dictation like you always could. There are the voice supports already. It's getting pretty fully featured.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is probably step one to eventually getting Siri on the Mac. I think right now the Apple executives are still trying, and Apple as a company is still trying to figure out whether Siri works on the Mac. Obviously, we want a digital assistant that we can summon at the click of a microphone, and I'm sure that they've tested it internally, but at the present, I mean, I can see how there might be an issue with dictation, an issue with how well it picks it up, especially on Mac. Like, we're talking a wide range of Mac laptops, right, and Mac desktops, and each of those has a mic in a slightly different place, and I can see how that might be a problem. So, you know, this in between that we've got, where Spotlight basically works like Siri, but you have to type it instead of say it. I think that's, you know, it's not my favorite thing, but it's a good compromise. I really like the fact that there's natural language implementation. I don't know how often I will type. You know, I will use it because generally when I'm using Spotlight, I want to type as few syllables or as few letters as possible to get my query. But I like that I can add booleans like that, where it's just like, show me what I was working on last week. Show me stuff last week with El Cap in the title or something like that. I like that can work. I like the fact that that Spotlight can search more things. Mm-hmm. I like that search feature is also added to Mail and Finder. There's a lot of good stuff coming down the pike, and also it kind of hints that maybe we'll see some of the stuff that's currently coming to iOS 9, perhaps in the next version of OS X, not the one that's coming out this fall, but the one after that.
Yeah, I use Spotlight a lot. I never used Alfred much. I never used Quicksilver much. I never used LaunchBar a lot, but I've used Spotlight increasingly over the years. I like the idea. I didn't think I would. I've always been a hierarchical file system finder kind of person, but it just became easier, and I'm also a lazy person, to just hit Command Space and start typing and have wondrous results populate in there. When Apple moved to the center of the screen, I was kind of happy because it made it front and center, but it also obscured some things for me. So I'm really happy now that you can move it, you can resize it. It has access to stocks, to weather, to a bunch of other data. Peter, is this going to lure people away from those Pro Launcher features?
I have no doubt that the vast majority of users are going to find Spotlight more effective than installing some kind of third-party launcher app. They already do. I'm with you, Rene, and you know it's interesting because Spotlight for me has been a very linear progression. But the interesting thing was when Yosemite made the Spotlight search bar front and center last year. That's when I started using it reflexively. I just woke up one day and just started using Command spacebar for everything. Before then, it was just kind of relegated to the corner, and I really didn't think about it that much. And yeah, I would pull it up on occasion, but I was very set in my ways about, sort of remaining rigidly hierarchical about where I put my data, and going to the Finder and opening up the folder directory that I knew where those files were. Now I just don't think about it. Now if I need to open an app, it's Command Space. Now if I need to find a file, it's Command Space. Now if I need to do a simple query on the web, or I want to find a showtime because we're going to go see Jurassic World for the third or fourth time, it's just Command Space. It's just reflexive now. So the more intelligence that Apple builds into Spotlight for me, the better off I am, the more I'm going to use it, and the more useful utility it is. I don't have any problem at all with Apple supplanting the need for third-party file retrieval or third-party apps that would do what Spotlight does, whether you're talking about Alfred or something else. I think that the more that Apple integrates that into the core operating system, the better off the vast majority of mainstream users are.
I would absolutely agree with you, and in furtherance of that, I'm going to stop us for a brief second so I can tell you about something else that is really cool, and that is Red Hat. Now you might be asking, why is Red Hat sponsoring a Apple show? Red Hat knows that a lot of Apple people are pretty savvy, and we know things about. We don't have like these weird mythic beliefs about open source software. We have really realistic ones because we use things like the Darwin kernel and things like Safari, and that's sort of what Red Hat wants to talk about. It's like open source. I'm going to say this. They're not saying this, but it's like open source done right. And everyone understands right now that in situations, open source software can be really important, can be really useful, can be really powerful. It can be really affordable. Tim Berners-Lee famously did the World Wide Web. He put it in the public domain. Berkeley Unix, the operating system the Mac is based on, BSD Linux, all of these things, these are based on free and open source software. So what Red Hat wanted to do is sort of bring that to the enterprise. The difference with the enterprise is it's not just one guy working in his basement making the ultimate computer rig. It is a company that has to have service level agreements and maintenance and support and all those things, and that's what Red Hat supplies. They've been doing this one customer at a time for over a decade. They started with Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and today they certify and support application development, storage, and cloud infrastructure for every conceivable enterprise deployment imaginable. The New York Stock Exchange, DreamWorks, each and every airline, healthcare companies, telecom giants, Fortune Global 500, all of them have Red Hat. In fact, 90% of all the companies in the Fortune 500 are Red Hat customers. Why? Because they get powerful, constantly improving innovations of open source without the risk of having to do it all alone. It's not like someone just drops a bunch of code in your lap, says, build it, good luck. Red Hat's actually there to help you through a very mature, very stable, very well thought out software process. It's that simple. Red Hat Enterprise Software, trusted in the world's most demanding data centers. You can find out all about it for yourself at redhat.com. All right, so let's move on. Ren, any favorite El Cap features of yours?
Oh gosh. Off the top of my head, I think that split view is actually going to be really awesome. I was very skeptical when I heard the rumors. But you know what? On a MacBook Air, on something with limited screen real estate, I really like the idea of being able to glue two full screen apps side by side.
Do you use full screen? Because I often don't.
I don't. Well, so my problem with full screen is that I feel like it's a little too single screen minded, right? Where I like the gesture, like I like going between screens, and I use it a lot during Apple keynotes or during anything where I want to have Safari windows full screen. Especially with videos, although Pippin, picture-in-picture is now going to help with that as well, where, instead of having to have a full Safari window dedicated to video, I can just pop it right out, and then it just hangs out. That's super cool. Cursor shake is really dumb, but also really awesome.
Oh, so cool.
It makes me really happy.
We'll get back to that again, Ren, when you're middle-aged.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. It's like it's a silly feature, but it's an awesome feature because it's really hard to find a cursor, especially with these small, tiny Retina, these giant Retina screens. And the cursor is ever smaller.
I can't find one on my iMac right now. I'm shaking it. There it is.
Yeah, it's not that easy. Gosh, what else?
That alone is going to make me upgrade this Mac much faster than it should.
I'm really looking forward to the new Photos improvements. Extensions, yeah.
And they're like iOS, so they're non-destructive. Developers will put them in the Mac App Store. We'll be able to go back, change. I mean, they look really good.
They really do. there's a lot that I'm excited for, and I can't wait for us to sort of dig deeper as the months go on, because I think there's a lot.
Peter, I know Metal, you're still throwing up the horns. Anything else on your list?
Well, yeah, editing extensions in Photos for Mac is going to be a big improvement. We don't quite have full-blown external editor support in Photos like we do in Aperture.
We don't have any blown external editor support.
Right, exactly. But it gets us part of the way there. It's sort of Apple's typical two-step of we heard what your request was, and we're not going to do what you asked, but we're going to kind of give you a feature that gets us sort of the way there. So
I wonder if it's just time though, because the Photos features, they've talked about them, but as far as I know, they're not in any of the betas yet. They're still being worked on, and I wonder if it's just what they can accomplish in the time that they have before this release.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. Safari's getting some really key improvements. Maps is adding transit directions just like it is with iOS 9, which is nice. Of course, my home city, Boston, is not on the list of initially supported cities, so we'll see how long it takes Apple.
Thanks, MBTA.
Exactly. I blame the MBTA, our local transit system.
China's getting like 300 cities because they have a unified, standardized way of doing this, and they worked out an agreement with Apple. Now, for the other countries, you have to go from petty government municipal bureaucrat to petty government municipal bureaucrat and beg and plead for the data that would actually help the people who live there.
Besides, I'm sure there was a weather event that prevented the MBTA from actually giving Apple whatever data it needed. That's a local joke for the Boston folks. Let's see, what else?
Can we go back to Safari for a second? Because there's a couple of things that really interest me there. One is if anyone's ever had those annoying voice things pop up, you now can mute them, but you can also see a whole list of the mutable targets in Safari.
And this has happened to me so many times, where all of a sudden one of the web pages that I've got open, and I'll have 5, 10, 15 some cases, tabs open at a time, and I know it. It's kind of a memory hog and whatever, but that's the way that I like to work. And then all of a sudden, some web page with an embedded video will start making noise, and it's very distracting. And it's also really embarrassing if you're in a crowded room with a lot of people, and all of a sudden an ad goes off for hemorrhoid cream or something. So now you'll be able to instantly pinpoint it and kill it. That is a very exciting change. Safari is also going to let you pin sites, so you can have your favorite sites open and instantly accessible just by clicking on the pin. You're going to see the fav icon in a list of pinned sites, and you're going to be able to open it more easily. So that's very cool.
Yeah, and they've redone the Web Inspector. So for those of you who like doing development in Safari, the Web Inspector is all new, much more awesome. Great job, WebKit team. There's a lot of good stuff to like. And also, one of my favorite things is you can now AirPlay video, just the video. You don't have to do full screen sharing like some sort of monster.
Oh God, that's and you're talking about inside Safari itself, right?
Yeah.
Right,
it's so clunky. Yeah, exactly.
Because that is very, very clunky when you want to show somebody a video and okay, I'll mirror my displays and now I'll extend it and I'll go full screen. Yeah, it's going to be a much more graceful process that'll hopefully make it much easier to do that without looking like an idiot.
All right, so we have there's a bunch more stuff to cover, but I don't want us to go too long through this today. Peter, any final thoughts on Dub Week or El Cap? We'll get on to iOS 9 and WatchOS 2 next show, but anything you want to round out the week with?
I'll recap what I said before. If you are in this business and you have an opportunity to go to San Francisco during WWDC week, even if you have absolutely no intention of going to the event at all or no reason to go to the event at all, make it a point to do so, because you can't spit without hitting somebody from WWDC downtown, and it is just an incredible experience. There's so many invigorating, inspiring people to learn from and to talk with. It's a great opportunity, and I'm very grateful that that I had the chance to go this year. As far as El Cap is concerned, I think it's going to be a tremendous update to OS X when it's finally ready. Right now, it's a developer preview. If you are enrolled in Apple's Appleseed program, there's going to be a public beta later on this summer. So for now, hang tight. And Apple's continuing to make improvements and refinements to Yosemite to make it more usable. So stick with the updates when you see them. but El Capitan is going to give you a lot more bang for your buck. And by the way, right now it looks like the system requirements for El Cap are going to be exactly the same as they are for Yosemite.
Exactly the same, yep.
So if your Mac can run Yosemite, just as it could run Mavericks, then it will be able to run El Capitan too. And you know what? Apple deserves a lot of credit for leaving that long tail on those devices, because that means that Macs going back to 2007, 8 years, 8-year-old machines will be able to run El Capitan.
If you still have an Xserve in your closet, you can leave it in there for now.
Yeah, that's right.
What about you, Ren?
I feel very similar to Dub as Peter did. I'm very grateful every year to get to go seeing the keynote in person. This is my second year being able to do that, but it's a really, really special experience just to see how excited everybody is to finally preview this stuff that they've been working on for months, and in some cases years. You think about things like Split View. I got a chance to talk to a lot of wonderful people. I got a chance to meet new people who I'd never met before, who are awesome, and now I want to be their friends. I cannot recommend going out there for San Francisco highly enough. I'm super, super pumped for OS X El Capitan. I'm sorry for people who don't know how to say it, but
El Capitan.
You got a couple months. It's okay. It'll just flow. It's OS X. When in doubt, OS X or El Cap.
¿Quién es más macho, OS X Yosemite or OS X El Capitan? ¿Quién es más
El
macho?
Capitan. Yeah, either that or we just say it. We start adopting ridiculous accents for it.
And sorry, Daniel Jalkut, but Apple did take it to 11.
Wah, wah, wah.
Wah. Yeah, I'm going to echo all of those thoughts and more. It was a terrific show. It's terrific updates. We're going to be talking more about El Cap. We're going to be talking more about iOS 9, Apple Watch 2, Apple Music. And the list literally goes on and on. There was so much to unpack there. So we'll probably do a Friday show to catch up on this kind of stuff, if not early next week. And we will work our way through it. We have a ton of FAQs going up on the site. We have a ton of explainers going up on the site. If you thought we had a lot of watch stuff in the past couple of months, you have not seen anything yet, because we're going to blow the doors off of this WWDC thing. Party going on.
Gird your loins.
No loins need girding on this podcast.
Get ready for content.
All right.
If you don't hear from us on Twitter, it's because we're all busy writing.
Yeah. Well, Peter, if people want to find out more about you, if they want to see if you're still alive, where can they go?
I have no idea why they'd be interested in that, but you can find me on all the social things at Flarg. That's Flarg. H, Rene, H.
H is in.
Of course, on iMore every day.
Flarg.
What about you, Ren?
You can find me at Settern, Settern, on Instagram and Twitter, and on iMore every day for all of the things.
You can find me at Rene Ritchie. You can find all of us at iMore. This show is up on iTunes. If you haven't already, please subscribe. Please leave a review. Please leave a rating. It helps tell iTunes that they should feature us and get even more people watching the show. If you want to see the video, it's available for you on YouTube, youtube.com/iMore video. I want to thank everyone for joining us. We have a ton of viewers today. You are all very elegant, very well spoken, and incredibly polite. We really appreciate having you all here. See you next time. Thanks, everybody.